When we think of soldiers captured during World War II, we often picture brave men enduring unimaginable hardships. But what about the women? What happened to the American female soldiers who were captured? Their stories are harrowing, filled with resilience and brutality. In today's video, we're uncovering the untold truth of how these women survived some of the most horrific conditions in history. Setting the stage, women in combat. During World War II, over 350,000 American women served in the military, taking on roles as nurses, pilots, clerks, and more. They weren't on the front lines, but they were often placed dangerously close to combat zones. These women displayed incredible courage, but many were unprepared for the horror that awaited them if they were captured. Captured female soldiers were often treated differently than men, though not always in a good way. Women were viewed as a vulnerable and exploitable resource, and their captors, whether the Japanese in the Pacific or the Nazis in Europe, had no mercy. While many faced the same brutal conditions as male prisoners, some experienced unique and horrific abuses, including sexual assault, starvation, and humiliation. Today, we'll focus on two key examples of how these brave women were treated by their captors. American female POWs in the Philippines. One of the most famous stories of American female prisoners came from the Philippines, where dozens of military nurses were captured after the fall of Bataan and Corregidor to Japanese forces in 1942. These women, later known as the Angels of Bataan and Corregidor, were initially sent to a Japanese internment camp at Santo Tomas University in Manila. Life in the camp was brutal. The women were subjected to starvation, with rations that barely sustained life. Disease ran rampant, and the Japanese guards showed little concern for their well-being. Though these women weren't forced into manual labor like male POWs, their suffering was no less intense. They dealt with the psychological horror of being cut off from the outside world, unsure if they'd ever see freedom again. Despite the harsh conditions, these women didn't give up. They used their medical training to care for their fellow prisoners and showed incredible resilience. By the time they were liberated in 1945, many were malnourished and close to death. Their story is one of strength, but it also highlights the indifference and cruelty shown toward captured American female soldiers during the war. Female POWs in Nazi Germany. On the other side of the globe, American female soldiers captured by the Nazis faced a different, but equally horrifying, set of challenges. Female pilots from the Women Air Force Service Pilots, WASP, who flew non-combat missions, sometimes found themselves behind enemy lines. When captured, they were often treated as spies, which led to extreme interrogation techniques and harsh conditions. Female POWs in Germany were often housed with male prisoners in crowded, unsanitary camps. There was no special treatment for being women. In fact, their captors sometimes used their gender against them. Many women were subjected to harsh interrogations, forced to strip during searches, and faced the constant threat of sexual violence from both their captors and even male prisoners. The psychological toll was immense. Women reported feelings of isolation, with little to no hope of rescue. They were left to endure freezing conditions, forced marches, and starvation rations. And yet, like their sisters in the Pacific, many of these women remained strong, supporting each other and holding on to hope even in the darkest moments. Some were liberated by Allied forces as the war came to an end, but the trauma they experienced would follow them for the rest of their lives. The legacy of female POWs. The stories of these women are a testament to the human spirit and the will to survive in the face of unimaginable adversity. Yet, for decades, their experiences remained largely unknown, overshadowed by the stories of male soldiers. These women were not only victims of war, they were fighters, resisting both their captors and the suffering they endured. Today, the legacy of these American female POWs lives on, reminding us of the sacrifices women have made in the line of duty. Their courage and determination to survive, despite the horrors of captivity, deserves to be remembered and honored. They showed the world that strength knows no gender, and their stories are just as important as those of their male counterparts. The treatment of captured American female soldiers during World War II was often brutal, but their resilience in the face of such hardship is what truly stands out. These women faced starvation, isolation, and even torture, yet they persevered. Their stories remind us that war doesn't discriminate, and the strength of the human spirit can shine through even in the darkest times. Let us never forget the courage of these women, who showed that in war, survival is not just about the body, but about the mind and spirit too.